Pleasant good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Tonight, Monday, 16th February 2026. The St. Kitts National Men's Council is happy to be with you again, and we hope that you learn something from what we have to offer. Of course, this episode is coming 2 days after Valentine's Day. A lot of us as black people, a lot of us as conscious people don't celebrate that occasion, but we do identify with the fact that February is celebrated also around the world as Black History Month. Now, it started off as Black History Week, but it was soon found that 1 week is far from enough for us to celebrate the very signal and significant contribution that we have made to civilization since time began. As a matter of fact, ladies and gentlemen, it is well said that civilization could not have existed, would not have existed, were it not for blacks and our place in it. When we consider, for example, the indispensable, powerful contributions that blacks have made in every sphere of life, and in some cases more so than any other race, it cannot be gainsaid that black people, we as black people, as a race, as an ethnic group, as persons with that melanin running through our veins and through our bodies, that we have done more perhaps for civilization than any other group of people. That doesn't make us superior in any way. Doesn't make us better than anybody else. But it certainly doesn't make us any less or doesn't make us inferior in any way to any other race or group of people. I'd like to therefore share with you the following bits of information. I've been a teacher all my life, so I love sharing information. I love teaching. So that in every age, in every era, in every epoch, in every dispensation of man's history, we of Negro descent, we of the Negro race, we of this color, have made distinguished contributions in every field. So that, for example, when we think of literature, and I love to read. In fact, I'm a writer myself, as some of you know. I love writing, and I keep saying that if Kittitians were a more reading public, I'd write even more. But in the field of literature, for example, how many of us have heard of Terence of Rome? How many of us have heard of Pushkin in Russia? And not just heard of these individuals, many of us have read their works. Those of us who have been fortunate to attend higher education institutions, particularly universities, especially those overseas, where we don't have any here, we would have had access to libraries which are replete with the works of writers the world over. Works which are not found in St. Kitts, in any of the two libraries, major libraries, that is the CFB, College Fitzgerald Bryan College Further Education Library, and the public library, both of which are housed in the same facility anyway. And the public library has been closed for a long time now. Nobody seems to be making any effort to reopen it. It's as though, hey, Kittitians don't need libraries anyway. So library is on the back burner, library is the least of our priorities. Imagine that. Well, I'm sorry, but even if there are only 10, even if there are only 5, I dare say if there are only 2 persons who love libraries, I'm one of them. So it's not just hearing of these individuals, because we might have heard others refer to them, others cite, quote their works. Some of us have been fortunate to read some of their output. So we have Pushkin in Russia, Dumas in France, sorry. I remember Dunmar in the United States, Paul Dunbar, William Edward Blyden Dubois, the great W.E.B. Dubois, from here in the West Indies. A lot of us have read about Robert Browning and Aesop. And we have our own local people in the Caribbean. Here in St. Kitts, we have, of course, Whitman Brown. We have, and he's done seminal work. Nobody has done anything close to From Commoner to King, which is a historical profile of the work, life and times of Robert Llewellyn Bradshaw. Right, in the Caribbean, we've had our George Lamin, we've had our Samuel Selvon, we've had our Walter Rodney, we've had Eric Williams, we've had Frantz Fanon. How could I forget Frantz? One of whose books, Wretched of the Earth, Margaret de la Terre, is one of my favorite writers of all times. Right? So, in literature, we stand out. Of course, there are a number of blacks who have won Nobel Prizes in literature. Some from here in the Caribbean, Derek Walcott comes to mind, of course. And then we have a number of them in the United States and certainly from Africa. When Things Fall Apart was one of my favorite books to teach at A-level literature, A-level English, before we abandoned GCE A-level for the lesser quality CXC Cape. Chinua Achebe, right, from Nigeria, of course, is a Nobel Prize winner and whose works stand out. Then we have, of course, in the field of rulers and leaders and warriors. We have heard of Queen Nefertiti, Amenhotep. We've heard of Mansa Musa. We've heard of Toussaint Louverture, Shaka Zulu. We've heard of Menelik in Ethiopia, father and son. The son being better known as Haile Selassie I. Alright? We've had all these guys. And of course, here again in the Caribbean, we've had the trio of B's. We've had Bradshaw, Bird, Barrow, Burnham, and the other one is slipping me at the moment. But we've had all great leaders of the Caribbean, and right now, even as CARICOM head meet in St. Kitts, CARICOM heads meet in St. Kitts, we are aware that none of them has been able to fill the shoes of any of these leaders who have gone before. Alright? We've had Lynden Pindlin in the Bahamas, George Price in Belize. We've had Edward LeBlanc down there in Dominica. And we wonder why is it our current crop of leaders, even those who are held in some form of esteem, like Mia Motley, why they cannot emulate or they have difficulty in following in the path of some of our former great black leaders here in the Caribbean. Alright? Do I have to mention, ladies and gentlemen, in the field of sports? I mean, I challenge you to name me one sport in which the leading player or one of the leading players is not of the black race, if you wish, of the black group of individuals who dot the face of the earth. Name one. By the way, I haven't mentioned George Washington Carver or Frederick Douglass and so on. These guys are in the field of science and so on. But in sports, when we speak of track and field, which names come to mind? When we speak of those races that call for speed and stamina, well, for those of stamina, they almost always dominated by the Africans, Kenyans, Ugandans, Tanzanians, and so on. Alright? At World Championships, at Olympics, they dominate. They predominate. But when it comes to speed, it was Jesse Owens back in the 1930s, and lots of others coming through. But super dominant, predominant, people like Carl Lewis. And of course, I salute the great Usain Bolt. Not to diminish our own Kim Collins, of course. Right? Some experts say it's going to take a while before anyone can replicate Usain Bolt's performance with respect to his records in the 100 and 200 meters. In boxing, pugilism, we call it, the great Muhammad Ali. Of course, at one point it was Mike Tyson. And it's really a pity that Mike allowed Buster Douglas to take him down, because he never recovered from that, plus his problems with the criminal justice system in the United States. But Tyson stands out as one of the greatest boxers of all times. Of course, we've had Floyd Mayweather and so on, but Muhammad Ali, the greatest. Black people in cricket, I mean, who can replicate the exploits of Gary Sobers, Brian Lara? I mean, do I need to call more names? These are guys who dominate the sport. No history of cricket can never be written by anybody anywhere. If they're going to chronicle the outstanding achievements, can Gary Sobers be left out? Can Brian Lara be left out? Even apart from his world records. Come on now. When it comes to football, soccer, another black man, Edson Arantes do Nascimento, Pelé, from down there in Brazil. Okay? And right now we have people like Mbappe who are dominating the scene. So, again, you cannot write the history of football, soccer, and not pay detailed attention to the feats of Pelé, a black man. In gymnastics, Simone Biles. In tennis, Serena Williams and Venus Williams. Who can beat them? Who can equal their record? Black people. In basketball, Michael Jordan. And currently, of course, LeBron James and others. The point is, if blacks are not involved, the sport is not as exciting. The sport is not as competitive. The sport is not as attractive. It's not as productive. You understand? So, we've made our map. But I'll tell you more. We live in a world where we take so many things for granted. We take so many things for granted, ladies and gentlemen. Things that we use every day without even thinking. But if they were not available, if we woke up tomorrow and found that we can't, that some of these items are no longer at our disposal, life comes so hard, you know. But do you know that so many of these things were invented, crafted, created, brought into being by black people? By black people? Let me give you some ideas. The ironing board. Ladies, some of you iron every day. I don't know one woman in St. Kitts who does not iron at least once a week. The ironing board. That lowly appliance, or I don't know if you want to call it piece of equipment or tool or piece of furniture, but the ironing board, was invented by Sarah Boone, a black woman, 1892. The lawnmower. The lawnmower. Imagine what our lawns, our yards, our green spaces will look like without the lawnmower. That was John Burr, 1898, a black man. The typewriter. Babbage, Burridge, and Masham, all black men. The typewriter. And we're not necessarily speaking of the modern keyboard. We're talking about the typewriter in its original form and shape. Because it's from that original prototype from which was derived what we have now. Just like Henry Ford with the motor car back in the early 1900s, or Ed Still and those guys in the late 1800s. What we have today is a far cry from what was invented then, but they started the process which we built on, as it were. How many of us can do without peanut butter? George Washington Carver. You heard me mention his name earlier. He not only invented that, he invented paints and stains and bleach and linoleum carpet and shaving cream and adhesives and ink and lotions and soap. A black man invented all of those things. A prolific inventor. Similar to, or surpassing even people like Ben Franklin, to whom a lot of homage is due because these guys were great inventors. What would we do without these items today? The pressure cooker. Maurice Lee, a black man. The pencil sharpener. How do we sharpen our pencils? If John Love hadn't invented that. You know how many pencils students in primary schools go through? And you know how often their pencils need to be sharpened? Because those of us who have been teachers, or those of us who have had children, as parents, we know how children like to blunt those points because of the pressure that they put on the pencils in order to draw their lines and make their shapes and write their letters and so on. But fortunately, the pencil sharpener is there to correct that every time. Thanks to John Love. The fire extinguisher. Which fire department anywhere in the world? Which building anywhere in the world? Any major building worth its salt, including schools, hospitals, libraries, and so on, do not have fire extinguishers. Do not depend on fire extinguishers. We need to thank Tom Marshall for that invention. How about the lock? The lowly lock. And I was thinking the other day, brothers and sisters, about the big difference between having a lock and not having one. And if you have a lock and you don't have the key, there's a world of difference. It's chalk and cheese. Between not having a lock to lock your door, whether it be a car door or a house or a safe, whatever, having to leave it open and locking it. What a world of difference, eh? And then if you use a physical lock, which you open and close with a key, you know the difference between not being able to open it, you can't find the key. You know what danger persons would be, and how many persons would have died, would have lost their lives because they couldn't find the key to open the door in time of emergency. So we thank William Martin for inventing the lock and the key along with it. I mean, we go to certain business places and there are locks galore. 5 and 10 locks on one door. Or one gate for that matter. There are some persons, they go from here to there, 5 feet away, and they're locking up. Locking their bicycles, locking their cars, not in their homes. So I'm trying to say that a lot of the things that we take for granted, but which are so critical for smooth operation of everyday life, were brought into being by black people. The postmark that post offices use on mail, William Barry. William Barry. And of course, Jan Matsilija, hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, from Dutch Guyana. No, Suriname. He invented the shoelacing machine in 1883. Emmett McHenry is the one who invented the internet. Alexander Mills invented the elevator. Garrett Morgan invented the gas mask. Ask the military. Ask firemen. Ask health workers. What would they do without the gas mask? And traffic signals, of course. The traffic signal was invented by same Garrett Morgan in 1923. Now, I'm not too proud of the traffic lights in St. Kitts, tell you the truth. I was proud to announce to people when I traveled that St. Kitts is the most developed, most advanced small island state without traffic lights. I used to be able to boast that. That we are one of the most sophisticated small island states, small island developing states, but which did not have traffic lights. I can't do that anymore. But I used to like that distinction. We were close to being dubbed a high-income country. A developing country we will always be, I believe, at least for the foreseeable future. But we were doing well. Then we introduced traffic lights. I'm not so sure that traffic lights have done a better job than our human traffic officers would have done. A lot of us turned out to see Donnelly do her final chicks and antics the other day, and we enjoyed it. We used to love seeing her. She was not only a sight to behold, but she did an efficient and effective job, kept the traffic flowing smoothly. And I believe that could have continued. But we have the traffic signal thanks to Garrett Morgan. The doorknob and the doorstop were invented by a black man, Oliver Dawson. The postal letterbox by Philip Downing. The toilet. Have you ever asked yourself what would we do, what would people in St. Kitts and the Caribbean and the rest of the world do without toilets? I mean, toilets going up around all the time, you know. The flush toilets we're talking about. When Columbus was here, they didn't have flush toilets. You ever ask yourself what did they do? To defecate, to pass waste? I mean, kings used to have to travel, leaders used to have to travel with their portable potties, if you wish. And they had official bottom cleaners and so on, bottom wipers. But thanks to Thomas Elkins, invented flush toilet. Robert Fleming invented the guitar. I mean, imagine a world without the guitar. Music is not music. Music is incomplete without the guitar. The guitar is a far more popular instrument than perhaps almost all except the piano. Only the piano perhaps might supersede all the guitar in terms of popularity. And the smallest child, he knows, he identifies, he recognizes the guitar of earlier clock. Alright? Even today, a lot of adults can't name the saxophone, certainly not the different types of saxophone. I myself saw a soprano saxophone for the first time just recently. They cannot identify the trombone and the flutes and the horns and so on, but they can all name the guitar. Thanks to Robert Fleming Jr. The lantern, we call it hurricane lamps, invented by another black man, Michael Haney. Gas burner by B.F. Jackson. Touchstone telephone, caller ID and call waiting, invented by Shirley Ann Jackson. The bicycle frame was invented by Isaac Johnson. Now ask any workman, ask any mechanic, ask any mason, plumber. Many technicians, what would they do without a wrench? That was invented by John Johnson, a black man. I am sitting here in comfort in Central Praise radio station studio because the air conditioning unit is running nicely. You know who invented the air conditioning unit? The air conditioning unit, AC unit? Frederick Jones, a black man. I'm enjoying this, you know. The clothes dryer, George Salmon, all these are black people. But those who like to say blacks are worthless and haven't done much for humanity. What a lie. I guess the biggest lie one can tell is that there is no God. And the second biggest lie would be that blacks have not contributed much. We have done more than much. What we have done is better than good. And now in Black History Month, February, it's a good time to remind you, the audience, that we enjoy life because of these things. Invented by people of our race. We start a generator. Even simple things like bottle caps. How would the breweries be able to make drinks if they want bottle caps? Could you imagine who would want to buy a drink without, except it was capped, except the bottle was capped? How would you transport cases of drinks if they didn't have caps on them? And then of course all kinds of insects and all kinds of germs and bacteria from the atmosphere get inside and then we get sick. So even the bottle cap. When we buy medication, when we buy juices, the bottle cap was invented by Jones and Long, two black men. So that might be simple and nobody hardly stopped to think about that. How could we get along without a bottle cap? Without caps on bottles? How many of you would go to a supermarket and pick up items for whatever purpose? Not just to drink, but even bleaches and disinfectants and so on. Who would want to pick them up without caps? Because we figure if they don't have caps, anybody can dilute them, anybody can pour anything in them, anybody can put poison in whatever. So we thank Jones and Long for inventing the bottle caps. Thank you, guys. The refrigerator, thanks to John Standard. Thanks to John Standard for inventing the refrigerator. Oh my goodness, we wonder, what did our foreparents do? And we're not talking about those who came from the west coast of Africa in the early 1700s. We're talking about those the last century, at the beginning of the last century. Here in St. Kitts. Your grandmother, your great-grandmother, great-grandfather, 100 years ago. How did they manage without refrigerators? Now that we have these things, they become sort of an integral, normal part of our daily lives, of our being, that it's difficult to fathom, to conceive of life without them. And then there are some persons, of course, who put everything in a refrigerator, things that shouldn't go inside there. Things that should not be, everything, bread, potatoes, peanut butter, jams, tea bags. They don't need cupboards in the kitchen. They don't need cupboards as far as I'm concerned. Rice, everything goes into the refrigerator. They just need a couple of refrigerators. They're only covered because everything goes inside the refrigerator. And by the way, when I was in Mexico in my first master's degree, long time ago there, staying with an elderly couple, and I couldn't buy a bottle of juice to put in the fridge in the house because it was filled with medication. I never seen it as bad as that anywhere else in the world, and I've been to a number of countries, to tell you the truth, including all 16 members of Paris. Never seen it like that. And I've stayed at home. I prefer to stay in people's home than to stay in hotels, of course. That refrigerator was bigger than the one I have. It was medium size. It wasn't the largest. It was one of the largest in terms of size that are available, and it certainly wasn't a mini refrigerator. It was medium size, and it was loaded from top to bottom with medication of all kinds. I really was sorry for the couple. They were very nice people, by the way, both husband and wife. Thanks to the refrigerator, they were able to stay alive for as long as they did. Ladies, again, the mop. How do we keep our floors clean without mops? The mop was invented by Thomas Stewart, a man. We have stair climbing wheelchairs. We've seen them. There was one at the Grimston Hill Society office, the old Matheson House. Stair climbing wheelchair, invented by Rufus Weaver, a black man. The fire escape ladder, a black man. Granville Woods invented baby incubators. Baby incubators. How many babies have grown to be adults thanks to the incubator in which they were placed when they entered the world and soon thereafter? That saved their lives, the way ICU saves a lot of people's lives. The electric cut-off switch, Granville Woods again. The telephone transmitter, Granville Woods. Air brakes, Granville Woods. So in some cases, one individual, one black man, used the brain that Almighty God gave him and brought into being a number of inventions without which we can't operate today. This is a good time to recognize them, Black History Month. Benjamin Benniker, clock. Louis Latimer, filament for light bulb and electric lamp. Jesse Eugene Russell invented the digital cell phone. That was a black man, you know. A lot of us can't do it without our cell phones now. If anybody pulls away and runs away with our cell phones, we are incapacitated. We're like a fish out of water. We have become so dependent on our cell phone, but that's for a different discussion. I really think it's a dangerous addiction we have to our cell phones. But the gadget was introduced by Jesse Eugene Russell, a black man. How many of us as children remember the Viewmaster or the Viewfinder toy camera? You know, I remember those days in boys' school and high school. Charles Harrison invented that piece of equipment. Who do you think invented the helicopter in 1907? Helicopter. Which military force can operate now without helicopters? Which rescue organization, including the Red Cross and so on, can operate now without helicopters? The helicopter is a critical vehicle. So many times after disasters, hurricanes, tornadoes, earthquakes, some areas are not accessible except by helicopters, which can land almost anywhere. There are no airstrips for planes to land, and they certainly can't get there by road. And we're talking about on land, so boats out the question. It's a helicopter that saves lives. And don't forget that drone is a mini helicopter. Eh? A drone, very important piece of equipment nowadays, is a mini helicopter. Invented by Paul Williams, 1907. We would have heard of Gladys West, who died recently, who invented Global Positioning System, GPS, without which we can't do a lot of movement We can't find locations. We can't find directions. Satellite systems and so on. Think it is full of automatic vehicles now. Vehicles with automatic gear shift. We invented that. We took spikes. Because don't forget, when vehicles were first invented, they were all manual shifting. The automatic came much later. And I lament the fact that in St. Kitts, almost every vehicle now on the road, 9 out of 10 seem to be automatic. Right? Very few persons seem to be able to handle manual shift, which is what I prefer to drive, to tell you the truth. The fountain pen, William Purves. My namesake, Michael Harvey, invented the lantern. And Walter Simmons invented comb. Simple thing, like I said before. The comb. Which hairdresser, which barber can operate without a comb? How can men and boys look groomed and handsome without a comb? How can girls have their hair flat and nicely done up and done down and done in without a comb? Walter Simmons. Not the accountant who died recently in St. Kitts, but a Walter Simmons of earlier times and of a different country. Then we have, of course, laser eye surgery. Laser eye surgery was invented by Dr. Patricia Bath, 1988. Home security system. Home security system, which we can now have not only on our televisions while we are in our house, we can see what's going on the outside, but on our cell phones, wherever we are in the world. Mary Britton Brown, a woman invented that. Cheese and bread. The siren that we hear, ambulances, police, and fire trucks blaring all morning, noon, and night. In some countries, much more so than others. Was invented by Kathleen McCoy Garrett, who also invented horns on your vehicle and the light indicator going left and right. In some countries, it's an offense not to use the indicator to switch lanes, far less to turn corners and not use it, as so many drivers in St. Kitts do. So many drivers in St. Kitts do not use the indicators. I don't know which is worse. Drivers not using the indicators or putting on the indicator to turn right when in fact they're turning left. And only at the very last minute do they change it, if they change at all, because some of them actually turn left while the indicator is saying right turn. But that was invented by a lady, a black lady, Kathleen McCoy Garrett. Thank you, ma'am. The toaster, Ruan Jetta, not a lady. The hairbrush, Lyda Newman, another lady. The curling iron, Theodora Stevens, another lady. I mean, I'm only giving you some, you know. I try to pick out some, right? But I see here things like Q-tips and so on. A lot of hair care products. A lot of utensils and cutlery. Without which we can't cook, we can't eat properly. We'll have to use our hands. Invented by black people. This is the time for them. We recognize them. 2026, month of February, Black History Month. So, ladies and gentlemen, it is clear that our history is one of accomplishment and achievement as black people. But we have some problems, you know. And I'm not going to be one to gloss over them. We have some serious problems in the black community everywhere. Everywhere in the world, including here in the Caribbean and our own cherished St. Kitts. Because the statistics do not speak well of us. Coming from such a mighty race, according to Marcus Garvey, up in mighty race. we still hurt and harm each other far too much. Men still abuse women. Their women whom they claim to love, their girlfriends, their wives. Far too much. Not isolated cases here and there, which one could say, oh, that's a once in a blue moon situation. It is the almost the norm. Violence and aggression against one another, black on black. Black men are killed by black men far more often than they are by white men. And black men kill other black men far more than they do other men of other races. Let me say that again. Black men are killed by other black men far more often than black men are killed by men of other races. And black men kill other black men far more than black men kill men of other races. In other words, we are our own worst enemy. Why do we kill each other like that? I mean, we know the statistics here in St. Kitts. The white man used to come and kill off all our young black men, you know. Over 500 over in a 10-year period, almost 500. No white men used to come and do that. For those of us who like to say the white men this and the white men that, it's black men, young black Haitian men, and Division men killing other young black Haitian men and Division men. Young black Haitian men and Division men being killed by other young black Haitian men and Division men. For years that happened until Dr. Harris brought it under control during his regnancy. And it started up again when the current administration took over. Fortunately, starting last year, we've seen a diminishing. Let's hope it stays like that. But why do we hurt and harm each other like that? And why do we not support each other? Whether it be in business or culture or whatever. What? We laugh at one another. Hey, I go over to Marriott on Saturday night sometimes and I look at the folks dancing. The tourists. And you know, I've never, not only there, but everywhere I go. I've been on a couple of cruises. Far more white and non-black people than blacks. And I've never seen any black person, or any white person laughing at another white person or other races laughing at members of their own race when the person dances or tries to dance. I've never seen that. But here in St. Kitts and everywhere we go, a black man or a black woman in the eyes of another person is not dancing well. Laughing, ridiculing, want to embarrass and humiliate other black people for trying to dance. And people are supposed to be free to do whatever movements they wish. It seems to me that people think that you can dance only if you can walk up. There's a lot of women, a lot of people confuse walking up with dancing. They figure that only if you can walk up, you can dance. And if you can walk up, you can dance. If you can't walk up, you can't dance. And there's such a big difference between walking up and dancing. There's so many women, so many men who walk up and can't dance. And a lot of people can dance well, and I don't think they've ever gyrated what we call, walking up in their lives. But they're very good dancers. Whether it be they're doing tap dancing or they're waltzing, they dance well. You admire that without having to walk up. But we laugh at one another. The person makes a mistake, or the person doesn't look good in our eyes. So people are afraid to sharpen their skills, to improve their ability to dance, because they're afraid of others. Other black people, mind you, looking at them and laughing. So they might as well go where they are not black, there are no black persons of other races, and do their thing. Nobody's going to laugh at them. So we have a problem. In spite of our glorious history, I just read out some of them to you. In spite of the fact that humanity owes, I believe, more to us as black people in terms of the development of civilization than they do to any other race. In spite of our great history, That's where we behave today. We complain that the Chinese are taking over, and the Indians and so on. But you have to examine that in detail. How many black persons with shops and stores, they ceased to be sponsored or supported or patronized by Kitishans who ran to the Chinese when they started? And we all have heard of these stories, and they're not just Nancy stories, they're true. Why is it that we as black people tend to dismiss our own and dislike our own? Look at how our politicians treat us, man. Here is one case where I think that even in other races, the politicians treat people pretty badly. Whether they be white, Indian, Chinese, Asians in general, politicians tend to look only after themselves, by and large. But that does not excuse us as black people doing that to one another. Our politicians treat us like that. They come with all kind of empty rhetoric, rabble rousing, with manifesto promises which are neither honest nor realistic. And then when they get elected, it is so clear that even the blind could see. In my constituency, for example, the representative was walking around on a near daily basis before being elected. Has she walked around once since that time? Since being elected? Why are we like that? It's strange, isn't it? I have something here, for example, that was written by a guy, Carlos Cook. He asks, isn't it strange that every race on earth can see beauty in their own women except who? Blacks. I asked myself this question. This is a good time to read it. Black History Month. Why are 99% of black women, once they become adults, because only as adults they can do as they wish. Of course, there are lots of them who go to school, minors, juveniles, whose parents allow them to do as they please. But on their own, they can only do so as adults. Why did so many of them cannot accept themselves with their natural, normal, God-given hair? Can somebody answer that to me? What on earth has given them the impression that they look more acceptable, more beautiful with these flat hair, whether it be weaves or wigs or braids? I mean, who told them that? Where did they get that idea from? How come you don't see them among other races? Who tells a woman that she doesn't look beautiful and decent and attractive? And sometimes we want to even use the word sexy. A woman doesn't have to look sexy, but she needs to look, a woman looks good, nice, decent, acceptable, with short hair, if that's her lot. But in any event, with her normal, natural hair that she was born with, that Almighty God in His wisdom, who we say makes no mistake, give them. Why do women have to change their hair? Why do they have to add so many things to the hair? Spend so much money and time putting in these false things? I would like an answer. Because I would like to tell women now, here and now, that they look lovely, regal, royal, with their natural hair. And some of them cut off their natural hair to accommodate these weaves and wigs and braids. They cut off their natural hair to accommodate them. And some of them have them running way down in their backs. Look so false. I don't know. Tell them that they look good or they look better. They look so false and unreal. Women, I plead with you today, 16th February, during Black History Month 2026. Keep and use your natural hair. And if I were Minister of Education, that is what I would dictate. That girls, at least, as minors, they can only come to school with their natural hair. No additions. No extensions. Nothing false. But now we see them going to, oh my goodness. So we have a problem. Hooks asks, isn't it strange that all other women, whether they be Chinese, Caucasian, Hindu, accept their hair and color as a natural gift? As a natural gift. Except who? Black women. He asked the question, doesn't it seem funny that all other people concentrate on operating banks and railroads and mills and steamships, lines and airlines and all kinds of businesses, but blacks concentrate on operating churches? We concentrate on operating churches. So we just want to fleece people then. Because for me, that's what 9 out of 10 churches do. They fleece their members. Cooks asked the question, why are blacks always begging for jobs? Good jobs, more jobs, instead of attempting to create businesses that make jobs possible. Why? Why are so many people, black people, refusing to buy black? Why are so many black people afraid to say that they're black, to identify as being black? I heard one girl the other day, a young woman, I think she might have been in her late teens, saying that she's too beautiful to be black. I mean, this is a woman like Oprah Winfrey, of that pigmentation. All of us know Oprah Winfrey. And she's saying she's too beautiful to be black. She must be of a different color. Buy black. Christians, divisions, Caribbean people, Africans, people of African descent, we need to buy black. We need to sell black. We need to think black, and we need to act black. We need to be black. Oh, women in particular. I mean, we hear it all the time. People cussing one another, calling one another black. Why about your black self, your black ugly self? Imagine that. I don't know how many white people curse black people and call them, why government you're black? This and the black that. But we do it to ourselves. Why you black this and that from here? Yeah. So we need to be more black conscious. What does it mean to be more black conscious? Black consciousness is the realization by the black man that anything he does, he is first and foremost a black man. Black consciousness is the realization that anything you do, you must recognize that you are a black person. It goes further. Black consciousness means that you disabuse yourself, or we disabuse ourselves of the notion that we are inferior to anyone in any way. I've shown you how in the various fields of endeavor we have stood out over the ages, time immemorial. Solomon himself, the great King Solomon, was obliged to write in Song of Solomon, I am black but comely. I am black but comely. Because even then, blacks were not seen as being comely. In other words, handsome and good looking and decent and all of that. Black consciousness also disregards anything which has a foundation in colonialism or imperialism. Because those two render everything black, everything that is black inferior, and everything that is non-black as superior. So, I want to end by reminding us of the 10 black commandments as we celebrate Black History Month, ladies and gentlemen. These are principles that blacks should adopt for survival. 1. We must seek unity with our Creator, recognizing the reality of God as we search for the truth which will set us free. That's principle 1. Principle 2. Brothers, and we represent the men's council, so we're talking to the men here now. We must commence being real men and stop exploiting the weaknesses of our sisters, black women, by disrespecting and misusing them, remembering that they're the bearers and nourishers of our children and thus of our future. I love that. But another principle, since sisters must dress and have a decorum that commands respect, dress and carry themselves with a decorum that commands respect, and then they demand that black men cease abusing them for present short-term gratification at the expense of future long-term objectives. Another powerful principle. As blacks, we must strive for academic excellence, not for the purpose of selfish material gain, but to prepare ourselves for a lifetime of producing service for the elevation and advancement of our people. We must, by our everyday example, challenge our friends, relatives, and associates to cultivate a wholesome race pride which will generate warmth, love, and a spirit of community amongst us as a people. 6. Our bodies must be treated as temples of the Holy One. Our bodies must be treated as temples of the Holy One. Therefore, we must safeguard our health by consuming good, life-giving foods and drink, and not consume harmful, death-dealing drugs, alcoholic beverages, and foods loaded with additives, preservatives, and poisonous chemicals. We must stop imitating the degenerate actions of white people, whose world order is diametrically opposed to the legitimate aspirations of black other people. We must stop imitating those actions. They are degenerative and decadent. We must stop lying and gossiping on each other and cease being aggressive, violent, intolerant, and hateful towards each other. We must actively engage in destroying the artificial barriers of political, sectional, fraternal, and religious differences which so foolishly divide and fragment our race. And principle number 10, or commandment number 10, we must today work hard to integrate and be non-violent with ourselves as we were yesterday, and to integrate and be non-violent with others, starting with those of our race. Ladies and gentlemen, congratulations, and celebrate Black History Month with joy and pride. Blessings, peace, and love.